Today, I want to share my design process for designing an office during my fourth semester. Everything started with the tour analysis. Of course, the tour is the most important part because it becomes the foundation of the whole project. Normally, a tour analysis should discuss many different aspects, but honestly, I didn't do that. I simply wrote down everything that I thought was important. Everyone pays attention to different things, right? So for me, this was the beginning of building my own design concept. It looked messy, but it reflected what was inside my head after reading the tour. Next came to the site analysis. Of course, site analysis is the foundation of every architectural design. This analysis was done together with my studio group, so we collected a huge amount of information. In the end, we grouped everything into 5 main analyses: environmental, sensory, climate, physical, and another supporting analysis. After collecting all the information, we discussed it together with our classmates and lecturer. Everyone shared different observations and ideas. Did we already have a design output? Actually, no. At this stage, we were only sharing information. The ideas were not fully processed in our minds yet. So instead of designing immediately, we continued with another analysis. This time, we visited a real office. This office visit became one of my favorite parts of the whole process. We walked around the building while a guide explained how the office actually works. We learned about the daily workflow, how people move through the building, how different departments communicate, and why certain spaces are designed the way they are. Of course, we took many photos, made sketches, and wrote many notes. Personally, I think studying people's behavior is one of the most important parts of architecture. Why? Because it gives us real reasons behind every design decision. Instead of guessing, we can actually understand how people use a space. And because I experienced it directly, the knowledge stayed in my mind much better. Now it was finally time to create our first design output. But don't expect something amazing. My output was only 2 sheets of paper. Yeah, just 2. The first sheet contained the conclusions that I personally thought were the most important from all the analysis. The second sheet contained my initial design responses. Basically, I asked myself, if there are the important findings, then how should I respond to design? It was very simple. I actually preferred keeping it simple because if I wrote too many ideas, I would lose my focus. After that, we moved on to the precedent study. According to my lecturer, this stage was very important, and honestly, I agree. I simply redrew several office precedents that caught my attention. Then I point out what I liked from each project. At the end of the study, I realized that most of the things I liked were related to passive design. For example, natural airflow, natural daylight, courtyards, and the relationship between indoor and outdoor spaces. But there was one concept that secretly appeared in my mind: zoning. At first, I didn't realize that zoning was slowly becoming my main focus. This will become important later. Next came sketching. Honestly, my sketches were confusing. I was still trying to understand my own ideas, but somehow I became too focused on zoning. I divided the building into 2 main zones with a courtyard in the middle. At that time, I thought it was a good solution. Apparently, it wasn't. My lecturer looked at my sketches and simply said, "You're rushing too much." He told me to slow down. Design should happen step by step. Every decision needs to be clear before moving to the next one. So I listened. I started again. This time, I began with the floor plan instead of jumping directly into the overall form. Everything became much clearer. Unfortunately, the clearer my drawing became, the more efficient I achieved. Efficient again, and again. Eventually, my plan became this. Honestly, I didn't even know what it was anymore. It somehow looked like a dinosaur. But I didn't give up. I continued sketching. Even though the sketches were still messy, they represented what was happening inside my head. Not long after that, I moved into 3D modeling. Everything started from a simple floor plan. Then I created my first complete design. It looked quite similar to my early sketches. 2 zones, 1 courtyard in the middle, just in 3 dimensions. But something felt wrong. The building didn't feel unified. The zoning concept didn't really work. And the courtyard, it didn't even feel like a courtyard anymore. Instead of improving the building, it became an empty space without a clear purpose. At that moment, I asked myself, if everything fails, then what should I do? The answer was simple. Make another alternative. My next idea was to divide the building into many smaller zones. Why? Because smaller zones could create more voids. More voids could bring natural light and natural ventilation deeper into the building. That meant my passive design concept could become much stronger. The idea sounded good, but another problem appeared. Because the building was divided into too many parts, the circulation became complicated. My lecturer said that this layout was not suitable for an office. People had to pass through too many spaces just to reach their destination. It was not clear, it was not accessible, it was simply too complicated. So, one more alternative. This time, I kept the same goal but changed the strategy. Instead of dividing everything into many separate zones, I organized the zoning more clearly. The courtyard stayed in the middle. Its purpose was to break one large mass into smaller parts while keeping the circulation simple. Now, the courtyard could finally serve its real purpose. It brought daylight, it improved natural ventilation, and it connected many spaces at once. My passive design concept finally started to work. With continuous guidance from my lecturer and many sketch discussions, I slowly developed the final design. In the end, I was able to produce a final poster, a physical model, and a design that I am proud of. Looking back, I realized that architecture is not about finding the perfect idea immediately. It is about analyzing, testing, making mistakes, receiving feedback, creating alternatives, and improving the design little by little. The most important lesson I learned is that every revision has a purpose. Without all those revisions, I will never have reached my final design. Thank you.